In this masterclass, I'll be outlining the techniques from the point in which the test is closed and the Go Testify intelligence has analysed both the gameplay and survey feedback. You can use these methods either if you're analysing by yourself or if you're working as part of a team in a meeting. Traditionally, your first thought is to go to the survey section. However, we'd recommend going to the automated report first. The reason why we would recommend that is because it's already analysed all of the survey feedback and also all of the moment-to-moment gameplay feedback for you on your behalf, and really identified those critical themes across the test from the player's perspective for you. And then when you start to build that picture, you can quickly get into this executive summary, which has done all of that hard work for you, and it's pulled together an overview from the start of their experience to the end of that experience and their final thoughts. And then once you've got a feel for what's going on in the test, you can then quickly move into the health status, which is basically breaking down your game into 10 distinct areas to allow you to see sort of underneath the hood of your game and see what is performing well and what's not performing well, so you can dive into the specific things that you could improve to take your game to the next level. And once you've spent a couple of minutes getting a feel for what's going on in the game, you would then typically progress down into the executive findings. This is when you're really going to start investing time, and this will be the most beneficial thing for you to really understand where are the opportunities for the areas that's coming from the player's perspective. What are the strengths that people are sort of like enjoying in the game? And then also what are the weaknesses that you could be looking at that could improve that game and take it to the next level for those players. Now, when you're in here, you really are just able to sort of take in that information quickly. But what we would typically do and recommend is that you are going into the evidence and looking into the sources and what's going on. Why is a player doing that? In this example here, we're looking at potentially how players are struggling with the cameras to sort of navigate the environment and move. And in this sort of scenarios, you might be just taking that information in and starting to build that picture slowly up about the big things that you might want to action. Now, once you've had the opportunity to explore the weaknesses, take in all the strengths, and also look at the opportunities, you're going to have a pretty good picture of what's going on from the player's point of view. However, if you want more understanding around some specific questions you might have had in the test that hasn't come through at this point, we would recommend going over to the survey section and investing some time just scanning through this, taking in the questions of importance to you to give you a bit more of a picture about what's going on. And then once you have done that activity, we would typically then recommend going back into the report and investing more time here. What we'd recommend doing is investing your time on the health status and really focusing on the areas which aren't performing first. This will get you to your core problems really fast and allow you to then action with the team quickly. And so in this scenario here with Super Meat Boy, we have the game mechanics, the controls, and the narrative that aren't really sort of like looking like they're in a good spot. So we'll first sort of dive into the game mechanics and look at what's going on. And the way the report is delivered, it's really helpful because you can look at it from the positive side of what is going well. And then you can also get into like what is critically coming across from the player's perspective. And from in here, we can access the evidence if we want to. And that can be anything from the survey or the data that's coming from the feedback itself. So it's a great way just to help build a picture and help you sort of understand the situations and the player's perspective really easily without you having to do a lot of work. And usually at this point, once you've sort of investigated those core areas, you probably have a lot of work that could be actioned straight into the team. But if you still wanted to dive into more and get an even deeper understanding of the entire experience from the player's perspective, then you'd really go and start looking at particular tools on our platform. And that's what we're going to go and look at next. In our sort of process, we would typically go then and start to look at some of the recordings. Once you arrive into the recording section, you will probably already have a good idea of who you want to watch. And what we typically like to do is observe the players that are potentially not enjoying the game as intended but at the same time also spend time watching some of the players who have really enjoyed it. Do you understand what are the differences and why does one player enjoy the game more than the other? And like anything, we do primarily spend time with the players more who are having the problems, because that's where you're going to get the most wins. And in this example here, we can see this player is starting to get into a bottleneck of where negativity is starting to creep through around this section. And the fastest way to analyze this player's experience, and also potentially all the other ones, is to use one of the other aspects of the GTA intelligence, which is the visual smart search. So what our team would typically do is they're watching the player, they will see something, they will then perform a visual search on this aspect of the game, and then that will cross-reference all of the players that we could look at later. And once we're happy enough that the accuracy of the clips is pulling back what we want, we then bookmark this for later reference. And I think this is level 4. And then we will name it for our team meetings. And what that's enabling us to do is, cross-reference all of the players very quickly later on with the team or by ourselves to analyze all of the players that played that level. And once we've finished observing all of those players, we would potentially have a lot of stuff that could be then supplied further to the development team to help them make informed decisions. But at the same time, we would then go off and spend time looking at all of the bookmarks that we've created, cross-referencing these against all of the players, and really diving into specific features where we might bring the controller out and really focus in, right, okay, what are these players doing in here? What is going on? When are they jumping? To really understand what are the interactions or what are these chain reactions that are causing these players not to enjoy the game or feel more often than they should in these particular levels. And once we understand all of those, we really do have a good picture of what is going on in the game and what is potentially affecting people and having fun. And from here, we then would go back to the team and start to see if they have any other questions. And if they do, we will use a couple of different other aspects of the GT intelligence. One is that we will head off to the insight section. Now, it's very likely that the team have a lot of work already on their plate, but if they do have questions during that period of transition between starting to implement change, the insight section can be a great tool for you to quickly just double check that if anything else came up in that test that is important for them. Typical categories that you can sort of search by are in here. Performance is one where you might be looking into particular performance issues in the game and trying to get that back into QA. However, you can also do things like search things for, say, asking any questions around maybe the walls in the games. You can do searches around certain terms to see what themes or what evidence exists in this test that we could use to help us make decisions. And if a team maybe have a specific question around some of the terminology and that's not coming from the insight, for example, they might just go, did anybody say certain things in the test? You can also use the transcript keyword search for hunting around the game for any times people mention a certain term. For example, we might just want to go where everyone said that. And these again can be bookmarked and referenced later for the team meetings if they want, or for you just to do your analysis. With all of this information, we're at the point now where we should have finished all of our work and really only coming back into these sections if we need to. So to recap and everything, you want to be using the automated report to get the context of how the play test or the test is ran really quickly. You want to use the executive summary, health status, and the executive findings to help build that picture and give you a good sense of what are the critical themes to address. You then want to move over to the recording section to then dive in and observe players and watch and really hear them on a deeper level. And then once you have finished those activities, you may then want to do visual searches and look across all of the players at a particular aspect of the game. You may want to answer some team questions either by using the insight section to hunt through that data, or finish off with looking at some keywords around some terminology. And with all of that information, you should be able to make very informed decisions and improve your game.
Surface more insight faster with Go Testify Intelligence.